Series 4 of My Greek Odyssey sees us travelling through the southern islands of the Dodecanese, from Kos to Symi and Rhodes, all the way down to Kastellorizo. It's a region of Greece with significant influence from Asia Minor, and landscapes quite unlike other parts of the Mediterranean. The history is as dramatic as the scenery, and of course, the cuisine is unforgettable. There's the cliched beaches and wonderful people, plus unique cultural elements that give each destination its own personality.
In the last episode, I started my time on Kárpathos. I'd never been to this huge island, so naturally, I was keen to see as much as I could. This episode picks up where I left off, with a couple more days to explore the place, before heading south to another island I'd never visited, Kassos. Sunrise is one of my favourite times of the day. In Greece, I'm usually the only one up and about, so I get the beaches to myself. It's also the time of day I like to get some exercise done, and in this case, I swapped the morning run and body weights for a paddle.
I love my kayak, and I love kayaking in Greece because this is the way. It's like walking. Walking is really how you see a town or a city. Kayaking is how you see the coast. And there's just so much fun and so relaxing. And in the morning like this, I don't think there's anything better. Problem is, you're on your own. And I don't have a double one of these so I can put Ellen on the back. Oh, just look at this. It's fantastic.
The landscape takes on a different personality when you view it under your own steam. You see more detail in the world around you.
Now we're so lucky. I think our saint, Agia Zoe, is with us because Kárpathos is known for its rugged weather and it's always pretty angry around here. But today, our beautiful saint has given us the best possible weather you could have. Whether it's her or nature, whatever it is, Buddha, you know. Thanks very much, we really appreciate it. And you know, I might get some mindfulness in today if I just stop talking, which is really hard for me. Oh man, it's beautiful. We're coming into Kirapanaya, magnificent beach, a couple of taverns. But you know what? You don't need a super yacht to enjoy this. Hire one of these for €5 and you have a great time.
It's the simple pleasures I get the most joy from, like our time in this part of Kárpathos. The night before we had a barbecue dinner and enjoyed some fireworks, then relocated further north. But Helen wanted to come back and spend the day swimming and having lunch at the tavern. I don't blame her either. It's the perfect spot to while away the hours. Everyone was up early, well, early for Greece, choosing their patch of sand on the beach and getting organised for a massive day of doing not much at all. You come here to relax, eat, swim, relax and eat some more. It's a basic routine. For me, it was a chance to paddle around the headland and see a little bit more of the island before our planned departure for Kassos. The hours pass slowly in places like this. It's nice to wind down a little and not have the feeling that you need to get something done or be somewhere else. Yeah, it's a cliched thing to do in Greece, but it's relaxation at its best. This part of Kárpathos is how I see the best of the Greek islands. There's a beautiful aqua blue sea with beaches where you find just a handful of return visitors, rather than crowds of tourists. The villages haven't seen mass tourism, so you won't find gimmicky souvenir shops. There are rugged, natural landscapes that seem like they've only recently been pioneered, and taverns that serve local produce with grandma in the kitchen cooking. It's about as authentic as you get. Othos village perched in the mountains is a great example of the Greece of old. You'd be lucky to find someone that speaks English, and there's nothing in the way of infrastructure for holidaymakers. The people that live here have done so for generations, and little will likely change in the next 50 years or more. From there in the distance, you can see the island of Kassos, which is our next port of call. Shrouded in cloud, there was an air of mystery about it. But before making our way across, we had to stop over at the main harbour of Kárpathos, at the town of Pigadia.
I just did not realise how long and big Kárpathos is. It's about 10 to 7 and we've been filming all day and I'm buggered. I'm going to go to bed straight after this. We're in the town of Pigadia, which is the capital of Kárpathos, and I'd say the majority of the population in Kárpathos live here, about 7,000 of them. But it's from here that the boats travel in the morning to go to the beaches for the tourists, and I'd say there's a number of tourists here at the moment. It livens up at night.
You'll find on most islands that the mornings start late and the port areas are typically quiet. Sometimes there's a bit of activity around midday, but generally, most people are at the beach. Mid-afternoon, the activity increases. People start to wander into the cafes and taverns for a coffee or some meze and ouzo. As the shadows begin to grow and the temperature cools down a little, the energy builds. The bars and restaurants become more lively and the whole place takes on a very different personality. This is the time of day when I start to hit the wall. The shoot days are long, and despite the crew doing most of the work, I'm exhausted. So while the youngsters head off for a bit of mania's free time, I'm off to bed. The ferries that service the Greek islands are massive. Apart from taking people and their vehicles around, they also bring a lot of supplies. Speaking of massive, despite being a huge landmass and close to roads, Kárpathos is considered quite remote. Daily access is limited to a few ferries and an occasional flight. Plus, not having the mass tourist development of its neighbour, there's a sense of isolation about it. This detachment from the mainstream means Kárpathos doesn't have the same forces of change imposed upon it, which makes it a few steps back towards the old Greece, not the homogenised tourist meccas you encounter elsewhere. Our next stop was even more isolated. Kassos is only 60 miles from Crete, but it might as well be 1,000 miles from anywhere, lost in the middle of the Mediterranean. Having never been there, I had the usual excitement I get whenever setting foot on a new island. I might have done plenty of research about it, as I do wherever we go, but there's always surprises and special experiences that no book or website can capture. For an island where much of its population has migrated to the US, particularly New York, Kassos is almost unheard of. Even many Greeks don't know about it.
When arriving in the main port town of Kassos, the first thing you'll see is this stony 1824 sign and the Greek flag, which is very, very significant to the Kassiates. At one stage, they had a population of 12,000 people. They had an amazing fleet of ships, a fleet of ships that they lent to the Greek Revolution. And as a result, the Ottoman Empire sought retribution. They razed the towns to the ground. They burnt everything, killed almost everybody. Those that survived fled to Egypt, much like the island of Sada fleeing to Syros. Today, there's only about 800 people left, and I'm told they're really friendly and it's a wonderful place. So I'm looking forward to exploring Kassos.
Kassos is a long way from the mainland, and the only way you'll find out about it is via a chance encounter with someone that might have visited. And once you've seen how little there is in the way of tourist development, you'll understand when I say the odds of that are pretty slim. Initially, I was underwhelmed by the lack of activity in the port town. Little was I to know, Kassos was all about the people, particularly the women. The first sign of life I came across was a man working, while 2 women supervised. This is just so unlike normal Greeks. It's a theme I continuously came across while here. To help me understand why this was the case, I met with Jenny, a 15-year resident of the island, born in Australia, repatriating to the island of her parents.
When I was a little girl, my mum and dad brought me to Greece and brought me to Kassos. And I said to them, well, I'd like to live here. I didn't want to go back to Australia. So one fine morning, when I decided to come to Greece, I announced that I'm definitely going to Greece for good. They were a little bit worried, you know, why at the age of 30? But I love Kassos so much. As I was growing up, Mum and Dad were actually talking about Kassos, Kassos, Kassos. And every day Our conversations were about Kassos, the panegyria, the people, the beach.
Yeah. So you've been here over a decade now, and what keeps you here? Why do you want to stay in this tiny little island where everybody knows you, knows what's going on? There's literally, I don't know, is there freedom? I don't know. What keeps you here?
The freedom of being able to come to the beach whenever you like, and an upbringing of not being scared for my children.
Right. And so you've brought your two children up here,
Yes.
and you want to keep them here and you want to stay here?
I want to keep them here.
Yep.
Of course, when they're 18, they'll have to go and study elsewhere because unfortunately the island doesn't have much to offer.
Yep.
And with the conversations that I have with my boys, especially my eldest, I want him to have, well, it's up to him if he'll have an education where he will continue to live here on the island. We're lacking a lot of things on the island.
Yeah.
And I would prefer him, like I would say to him, maybe a microbiologist, maybe an X-ray operator.
Yeah.
So hopefully when he grows up, he would like to stay here.
I was quickly discovering the island's ability to draw people from across the entire social spectrum, from young parents raising families away from the complexity of city life, to retired prima ballerinas looking for solitude and a way of giving back. The last thing I expected to come across on Kassos was a former world-class ballet dancer. In her prime, Eliza was at the pinnacle of her profession, famous in the dancing scene. It's hard to imagine going from being in the limelight to retiring to such a sleepy island.
I had a vision when I was much younger to go to a place that's remote, tiny, and where children don't have the opportunity to actually learn classical art like ballet. And the vision came true. It just happened.
So this is like a give back, is it?
It is sort of, because I've done a lot of my life. I danced with classical ballet companies all over the world, globally, and at some stage when you've done it all, you think, now I have to give back. Yes.
Wow, I mean, you've been all over the world, professional dancer, you've been in the bright lights, you're going from one extreme to an absolute other extreme. How's it been?
Difficult,
Yep.
but also exciting.
Rewarding?
Of course. Sometimes extremely rewarding, sometimes very depressing. Of course, there's always ups and downs in life.
There are no ups without downs.
Of course.
And I can see your
in
students
life.
in there practising away, having a good
Yes,
time. So,
I ground them.
yes. I mean, bringing joy to others that you do, to people that are normally not privileged with that, it's a wonderful thing.
You know, they didn't know what classical ballet was all about when I came to the island. They hadn't heard classical music. This was very difficult for me to start passing all this over to them.
Right.
They have changed so much in the past 5 years. You're seeing children that you would see in London,
Yes.
you know, coming out of a ballet class. And if you had seen them 5 years ago, they were villagers, islanders,
Yes.
had no idea what all this is all about.
Is there a chance of a prima ballerina coming out of here?
There was, actually. I did have a wonderful dancer. All my friends in London and Australia
Yes.
and France were saying, ballet teachers, were saying, oh, she's fantastic.
What
have
happened?
you done? She had to stop because she has to study now.
Right.
She's 11 going on 12.
Right.
And here on the island, because they don't know what it's like in Athens or any big town,
Yes.
capital, they think that after 11 years old, all you have to do is school and study. You can't do anything else. So,
What an amazing woman. To start this dance school from nothing is courageous enough, but in a remote island with a tiny population, facing language and cultural barriers, and with an art form that's almost alien to these people, it's easy now to understand how this type of determination and attitude led her to the top of the world in ballet. In Series 3, I visited the Patmos mills to see how they worked, where we took a few kilos of that freshly ground flour for the boat, waiting for the right time and recipe. And today was the day.
Perfect. I'm going to take you as a miller.
Okay. Oh, this is the flour. Can I have a look?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
smell
look
it.
At that. Look at that. Look at the flour.
Strong flour.
Oh, hang on a second. Look at this. Look at this. Now, oh, I don't think I've smelt flour like that since I was a little boy.
Yes.
And that was a long time ago. Wow. So we've got this wonderful flour from Patmos. We have to use it and see what it's like using the original organic gear, you know? We've got ելιές από
Λέros.
olives from Leros, and we've got the buffalo cheese from Lipsi.
Lipsius.
So what are we going to make today, Kyriako?
Θα φτιάξουμε ένα ελαιόψωμο, ας πούμε, με ελιές και τυρί.
So we're going to do a bread that's made from olive oil with olives and cheese in it. Man, I'm looking forward to it. What do we do? What are we going to do?
1 κιλό αλεύρι.
1 kilo of flour goes in there. Looks like there's some water, some olive oil, 500 mils of water, έτσι.
Ναι.
200 mils of olive oil, 1 spoon of sugar, but Helen's watching and she's a bit concerned that we're using sugar, but Helen's not going to eat bread because she's gluten-free, so it doesn't matter. What do we just put in there? We put yeast, right?
Yes.
Yeast.
Είναι 20 γραμμάρια.
20 grams of yeast and some salt. A tablespoon of salt. A tablespoon of salt.
Και τα
That's
ανακατεύουμε
it.
όλα μαζί.
It's easy. This is the first bit, and we just use the mix master thing that needs it. Oh, come down and have a look at this. It's unbelievable. Have a look at that. Can we σταματήσουμε μια στιγμή?
Ναι, ναι, βέβαια.
It's amazing. Have a look in there. Have a look in there. Have a look at the gear in there. Will you? Can you see there? Can you see? Can you see that? It's awesome, man. Okay, all right. Daughter, turn it back on. Now, what are you doing now, Kyriako?
Θα τα ζυμώσουμε και θα τα αφήσουμε να φουσκώσει.
Okay, so we're going to knead this, and once it's kneaded, we're going to leave it so it rises. Wow, this is awesome. I love it. Bread's so easy to make. Εύκολο, έτσι.
Εύκολο.
Eh?
Απλά πρέπει να φουσκώσει 2 φορές.
How long does it take to raise?
Πιστεύω ότι σε 20 λεπτά θα πάρει το πρώτο χτίσμα.
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
It was almost as noisy as a construction site, like a mini cement mixer. I have to admit, I found it mesmerising, watching the machine while it kneaded the dough.
It looks like it's ready when it's starting to fight with you and it doesn't want to mix anymore, just going all over the place. So when it's going all over the place, after about 10 minutes of kneading, it's ready to go. So what are we going to do now, Kyriako? We're going to leave it there for how long?
Αφήσουμε 20 λεπτά.
20 minutes. We're just going to let it there, sit there for 20 minutes as it rises, okay? That's the yeast doing its work. Wow, look at that. Isn't that fantastic? That's awesome. Now, Kyriako, what are we doing now? What have we got? It's easy, isn't it?
Θα τα βάλουμε όλα μέσα.
Όλα
και
μέσα.
θα βάλουμε να το ξαναζυμώσουμε λίγα.
Okay, so we're putting the olives in. The cheese has been diced into these little guys this size. The buffalo cheese. Oh, man, that's awesome. And now we put in the oregano.
Oregano.
Oregano. Awesome. Look at that. That looks fantastic. Is that going to be okay in there? You reckon it's not going to go everywhere, is it?
No, no.
It's okay. And και ζυμώνουμε τώρα, and we're kneading again. We're kneading again. And after this, how long do we leave it?
Θέλει τώρα το δεύτερο, φουσκώνει πιο γρήγορα. Σε 10 λεπτά θα είναι έτοιμο.
So the second time that we leave it out, once it's been kneaded, it only needs to be out there for 10 minutes before we put it στο φούρνο, έτσι.
Όχι, και εδώ.
10 λεπτά εδώ και μετά στο φούρνο για πόσο καιρό?
Θα τα κάνουμε ψωμί.
Α, θα τα κάνουμε.
Τα 10 λεπτά και μετά θα το φουσκώσουμε.
Hey, you love the way he says it. It's like he's in love with it. Θα τα κάνουμε ψωμί. You're a legend, man. Yeah. He's the best.
Όχι,
Okay. All right. Look at that. He's going to do it by hand because he wants to get it right, 100%.
Ναι.
Here, have a look at this. Have a look at that. Oh. Have a look at this. Just look at the color, the texture of this thing. Εκεί μέσα.
Ναι, 10 λεπτά.
Okay, in here for 10 minutes. Awesome, huh?
This type of cooking requires plenty of patience, which historically isn't my strong point. There is a little bit of downtime between each step in the process where you can have a coffee and relax, or in my case, send a few emails. But then it's back into the kitchen for the next step.
What do we do now? What do we do now?
10 λεπτά να φουσκώσουν.
There's one more room. Let's put that one over there.
Okay.
Okay, right. 10 minutes.
Να φουσκώσει.
Another 10. Why another 10 minutes? What's
Θέλει υπομονή και βάει.
fairly? That does need patience, and I don't have any of that stuff.
Σε 10 λεπτά.
10 minutes, and then in the oven. Would you turn the oven on, eh?
Ναι.
Turn it on. Come on, turn it on. Oh man, look at these guys! Look at these guys! Look at these guys! They look awesome, man.
Είναι ωραίο ψωμάκι.
Ooh, they look hot. They are obviously hot. You can see the cheese really hasn't melted. It's still solid, whereas my mother-in-law's ones that used to melt inside, you know. Oh, look at that. Oh.
Είναι πολύ ζεστό ακόμα.
Oh, it's still very warm. You know what we're going to do? We're going to leave it for the moment. Look at the smoke coming out of that smoke pan. Look at that. Hang on. Oh, and we're going to make it a sandwich. And it's dripping. Oh.
Και περιμένουμε 1-2 λεπτά, είναι καίει πάρα πολύ, θα καείτε έτσι αλλιώς.
I want to eat it now, but I'll wait. You're the best. You are the best, you know that?
Και τα ντοματάκια αυτά είναι ντόπια, είναι πολύ.
I can eat them now, can't I? They're local.
Τραγανό, τα που θέλεις κάνει στο στόμα.
This was a real test for me, but I persevered, and in the end had the most amazing olive and buffalo cheese bun made from Patmos flour. A salted egg drizzled with olive oil completed the perfect sandwich. I woke up earlier than normal, long before sunrise, so I could travel to a farm in the centre of the island. The local Cassiet I was about to meet left the most remote and sleepiest landmass in Greece, only to spend most of his life in the busiest city in the world, one that never shuts down. Today he's back in the serenity of Kassos, trading the crowds and busy streets to be a herder on the mountain trails, and I get the feeling he prefers the latter of the two.
Τι γίνεσαι? Πώς πάμε, καλά?
Δόξα τω Θεώ, καλά.
You're looking well.
Yeah.
Are we feeding the sheep now?
Yeah.
Let's go. You want a hand?
No, I got it.
Έλα, πάμε. Όπα.
Να τα μικρά μας ήρθαν. Έλα εδώ, έλα. Ρίξε το σε ένα μέρος, εγώ θα το κόβω με το χέρι μου.
Okay.
Ρίξε πάνω. Έλα, καλά είσαι. Εντάξει.
This is the life.
Beautiful sunshine.
This is the life.
Yeah.
Hey, you worked hard in America and now this is completely different.
Yeah. Something different, yeah, you better believe it. Έλα. Έλα, κόρη μου, έλα.
Man, this is awesome.
Έλα. Έλα, πρωτάκι μου, έλα.
Morning feed. Everybody needs a morning feed. You were in America in restaurants for 47 years.
48.
48 years.
48 years, yeah.
And you're originally from Kassos. You left when you were how old?
I left Kassos when I was 16 years old. I started as a dishwasher.
As a dishwasher?
1970. I make 60 hours a week. I make $90.
60 hours a week as a dishwasher, $90. Wow.
Yeah.
And then you worked your way up?
I work my way up. I went to the grill after.
On the grill?
I work in the grill.
I worked on the grill too.
And after I work in, I cook, I make the soup.
Yep.
And after 5 years, I go my own business. Me and 4 other partners.
So you came back to Kassos?
Yeah.
You got your sheep, you got your goats?
Yeah.
Life is good here?
Oh, yeah.
But life was good in America too?
Yeah.
Good country?
You know, America is a nice country. When you work, you make it.
Yes.
You know, you gotta work many hours.
Yes.
Many hours to make it.
Nikos' story is common amongst Greeks and many Europeans of the mid-1900s that left as boys, fleeing their farms that could no longer compete in a world that was changing thanks to the Industrial Revolution. Many chasing work and a new life in the big cities had their childhood sweethearts sent over at a later date, eventually getting married and raising families.
Nico, every morning you get up what time?
I get up 4:30.
4:30?
4:30 in the morning. My sister called me because he think I'm gonna oversleep.
And you do this until what time?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, and then what do you do after that?
After that, I go drink coffee.
We're going to drink coffee later?
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
After 48 years, Nico and his wife returned to their homeland to rekindle past friendships and a way of life that never left their minds. They were now living their dreams on the land of their forefathers, doing things the way it was done for centuries before them. Their children have gone on to live their lives in America, where they were born and raised. Maybe someday they'll hear the call of Kassos too. Nico and his returning mates are a dying breed that will never be replaced. Living off the land, hunting for game, selling their produce to the local villages, and leading simple, sustainable lives. The empty mountain roads lead you to tiny towns, well off the beaten track. All around the island there are hillside villages and small coastal enclaves where a handful of people manage to forge a life. It might not be the easiest way to live, but something tells me it's very rewarding, suiting those that choose to be off the grid. Not many outsiders take the time to head inland and explore the rural heart of Kassos. Quite frankly, there aren't many outsiders that even come to the place, let alone go wandering into the relatively unknown. But for me, it was the best way to get a true sense of the island's identity. What I discovered was a community-minded people, in tune with their environment and not driven by wealth or consumption. Life is simple, and meeting people like Nico only made me want to unearth more of the place.
The main port of Free is sited by the old port of Buka and the ancient port of Emborio, which is now a beach. Now, when you first look at Kassos and this town, it's not the best looking town. It's not made for tourists. There aren't any tourists here, only the guys that come back from the diaspora. There's the occasional tourist. It's actually one of the only islands I know of that nobody actually goes to, but that's what's lovely about it. And if you go beneath that, not best looking facade, you'll find a friendly bunch of people, good food and a serene time.
I wasn't going to give up on Kassos. If there's something other than the matriarchal women and tiny villages, I was going to find it. I soon realised I was looking at the place like a tourist. But Kassos isn't set up for visitors in the traditional sense of tourism. So you need to remove the prejudices associated with those expectations and see the island as a resident does. The funny thing is, the locals were intrigued by us and wanted to meet and find out who we were and why we were there. Usually it's the other way around, with the outsiders looking in wonder at the locals. The moment that gave me the clearest understanding of the identity of Kassos occurred late in the evening. As night fell and the tavern I was in finished serving, some of the customers sat with the waiter, chef and owner. Together, they gathered as a tightly bonded group of friends, playing music and singing. You couldn't help but be drawn into this, regardless of who you were and your ability to communicate with them. This was a family that was content with very little, but had so much more than those in the big cities with far greater financial wealth. I'd finally discovered the heart and soul of Kassos. This isn't just another Greek island. It's a close-knit community of beautiful people that find a joy in each other's company that few of us will ever get to experience. Rolling countryside and stunning scenery everywhere you looked. I could get used to this. It felt strange driving on such great roads without passing a single other person. It's as though they've prepared the island for a future that will see a boom in population or tourism. And maybe that'll be the case. For now, it's as far from being a busy tourism hub as you'll find.
About a 15-minute drive from town and a 5-minute walk from the car park over there, you get to this point. And down there is considered one of the best beaches on the island, Avlaki. And it's a steep descent, and I'm going to see what it's like. The crew are a bit seedy from last night. They had a big night.
I went to bed early, so I'm making them walk all the way down.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. When a local Greek tells you a hike is 15 minutes long and on a walking track, don't necessarily believe them. More often than not, it'll turn out to be at least twice as long. And as was the case here, there's no trail. This was a scramble down a watercourse, so always plan for a longer than expected day out. Pack plenty of water, and remember, going downhill might be difficult on rocky terrain, but going back up after a day of swimming is a whole lot tougher. You do these things to see places few get to explore and experience hidden parts of an island that only locals know about. The effort brings more rewards than just pretty views and a beach to yourself. It also gives you a sense of achievement, and the anticipation of what lies ahead is always exciting.
"15 minutes? No way. More like 45. Rough track, but wow.
The southwestern peninsula of Kassos has two very different sides. On one, it's settled, with generally still water and light breezes. On the other, it's a very different story. There isn't landfall for well over 100 kilometres, so the sea builds up to a force that you wouldn't know about around the corner.
Now seriously, Avlaki was a 15-minute drive and not a 15-minute walk. It was more like a 40-minute walk through a path that I got lost on 3 or 4 times, but it didn't matter because all you had to do was aim for the beach. Yeah, it was difficult. Yeah, it's a pebbly beach. But you can see for kilometres around you and there's nobody here. The water is pristine, the temperature is absolutely magnificent, and there's only one thing you do when you get down here. Take it all off. But you can't stay for all that, I'm sorry.
Please understand, I'm certainly not an avid nude bather. In fact, I'm a little self-conscious. But something came over me when I walked down here. The place was calling out for me to strip off and connect with nature in the most raw way. Wow, what an experience. It's kind of liberating. I could get used to this, but only at beaches where there's not a soul around for miles. You know how earlier I mentioned being mindful of the walk back up? Well, I certainly was, which is why I called the captain to race around and pick us up in the tender. Apart from feeling a little lazy, I also wanted to check out the coast. The locals told me I had to step foot on a tiny island across from the mouth of the harbour. What had excited me was that beneath my feet on that tiny islet, I'd be feeling sand, not the pebbles you get on a lot of the beaches in Greece. But before getting there, I had the dramatic cliffs to take in.
North of Kassos and very close is this small uninhabited island of Armathia, which has this beautiful soft sand on its 3 or 4 beaches. In summer, there's a little keiki that will take you here in about 15 minutes. And you can come and have a swim in this beautiful turquoise water. It's uninhabited, but at one stage there was 100 people living here and there was a couple of taverns. All gone now.
This amazing little spot is a great example of why you shouldn't always believe what you read. Nowhere, in any of the numerous top beaches of Greece articles I've read over the years, has there been a mention of this beautiful haven of Armathia. I've seen my fair share of Greek islands, and I reckon I've walked on 1,000 beaches, and this place is now in my top 10. But let's keep it to ourselves, otherwise they might build a resort over here and ruin it.
I don't think I've ever felt softer sand in Greece. The granules are so fine, I think the next level down is flour. It's just so soft. You walk up here and you just collapse. Look at this, you just collapse into it.
Amazing.
Soft sand, warm, turquoise water, and nobody around. Helen thought all her birthdays had come at once. Whether it's through research, the captain and I looking at maps, or by talking to locals, it's always my mission to find the best beaches for her to bask in.
I'm an idiot. I didn't bring my swimmers. I might just get down to my underwear and go in for a swim.
The nude bathing at Avlaki must have liberated my mind. Here I was talking about getting my kit off again for another swim. But can you blame me? This place is too pretty not to go for a dip. Anyway, there's no one around, except for the film crew.
Even this tiny, forgotten island of Kassos has its historical ruins. Finding them is hard enough, and thankfully for the locals, they can point the way, but once you get there, you get on the track, and thankfully this is a paved track, and it's been a while since we've seen a paved track to ruins, and our crew are all smiles. So we're heading up to Elinokamara, I think that's what they call it. I'm looking forward to it.
This site is significant for many reasons. It's so important that they've built this path to provide access. Not that anyone uses it. And decades after it was discovered, archaeologists are still investigating its origins and purpose. But being so remote, on an island in the farthest corner of Greece, has placed it on the back pages as barely a mention of a place to visit in the Aegean. No one comes here. Even the locals couldn't guide us to its location.
Wow, it's just really imposing when you first walk in here and you see these massive blocks and these smaller ones which show you that it's been built at different times. And now I can understand why it's called Elinokamara, which means Greek vault. It's basically a vault built into a cave. It's a really impressive thing to behold. What I love about this space that's within a cave and partly structured at the front is the number of civilizations that have actually occupied the space. The first thing you'll see is this fluted column, which must have been part of an altar on a Byzantine church. Then you come through here and you see what was imposing when we first walked in, which was these Hellenistic blocks. This must have been some sort of 5th century BC Hellenistic wall, and that's recorded and confirmed by archaeologists. We then walk through and you can see that there is a division between two parts of the cave, from which time possibly Hellenistic, and then you keep coming through to the opening and then to the other portion of the cave, and there is this old rock wall, which could be Byzantine, I'm not too sure. And you come in here and it's still being investigated, as you can see. But what else has been found in here and confirmed is Minoan script, which is 3,500 BC, and also some prehistoric evidence. So we're talking about civilizations using it as far back as prehistory, 7,000, 3,000 BC, Hellenistic times most definitely, and then through the Byzantine times, and just as recently as 1824, when I'm told some of the locals hid here from the Ottoman raid, and the place was burnt down and they didn't survive. It's just an amazing space.
Kassos had sent its fleet to help with the liberation of Greece, and the retaliation of the Ottoman Empire was to be expected, but no one could foresee the brutality of the massacre that happened here. The Egyptian fleet, along with 1,500 or more Albanian troops, landed on the relatively unfortified island after spending 2 days bombarding it with artillery. They swept across, and quickly the islanders capitulated. 500 Kassiite men were slain, and over 2,000 women and children sent to the slave markets in Crete and Egypt. It was devastating. Yet despite what occurred, when the Greek fleet eventually arrived and offered the survivors transport to a new home, they refused, preferring to stay and rebuild.
It's our last day in Kassos, and I'm sad. I'm sad because you can't really show Kassos on film. What we've seen, I haven't really delivered to you, and I apologise for that, because it's about the people. These are generations of people that have stuck together, worked together, lived together, and it's such a small community, and you can see it in their hospitality. They say hello, good morning, good night, every time you go by them. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. And you only experience that when you come here. 4 days just wasn't enough.
There might not be any nightclubs here, but if you like to sing, dance and play music, you can definitely do it on Kassos, and will likely be joined by the locals. If you show a little interest in getting to know them, you'll discover they're friendly people, keen to share their stories and some of the secrets of the island. You don't have the everyday conveniences like takeaway shops, cinemas, lots of retail outlets and electronic stores, but what you do get is something far more special. Kassos is as raw as you get, and with that rawness comes honesty.
Travelling down the coast of Rhodes, we've come to the southernmost tip. And behind me is Nissy, which is separated from Rhodes with this tiny little sand isthmus. And as you can see behind me, there are windsurfers, kite surfers, foil surfers. They're all lunatics because there's so much traffic there, they need some sort of air traffic control. It's an awesome sight. I don't think I've seen so many kite surfers in one spot. No other word for that than wow.
You never hear about it, but professional athletes and novices alike travel to Greece from all around the world to do extreme sports like this. It's not just limited to Rhodes. In Lemnos there was also windsurfing. Kalymnos has some of the best rock climbing on the planet. The mainland draws mountain runners. Ikaria has surfing. There's even canyoning and cliff diving. So don't go thinking this part of the world is just for history buffs and sunbathers. I might be biased, but I can tell you now, there's something in Greece for everyone. Young, old, active or relaxed. It's a choose-your-own-adventure kind of place. Me, I like a bit of everything, so I might have to get the flight board out for a whirl. Actually, I think I'll just spectate because it looks like madness out there. In the next episode, I'm exploring the island of Rhodes. It needs little in the way of introduction, as no doubt most of you have heard at least something about it. It's one of the most visited places in Greece, with a long history that's clearly visible through the incredible architecture. Rhodes is a complete contrast to the islands of Kárpathos and Kassos, where we'd spent the last 10 days living in peace and tranquility. It was time to get back into civilization and delve into the story of why this is such a popular tourist destination. To see more of My Greek Odyssey, head to our website at mygreekodyssey.com. There you'll find plenty to keep you entertained, including Kyriakos' awesome recipes.